Well, thank you for having me here today. I want to talk to you about how I'm coming forward to run for the leadership of the BC Liberal Party. It's been a long time, this race that started after the last election in October of 2020. It's going to be 15 months between the time of the last election and the time that we select the next leader on February 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And as we come into this last 90-day period, we have the membership cutoff for people who want to join to become members of the BC Liberal Party on December 17th. So this is a very important opportunity to talk to you about myself and why I'm coming forward for the leadership of this party and how I see the importance of the rebuild of the BC Liberal Party to come forward for our province of British Columbia. So as many of you may know, I'm born and raised in Vancouver. My parents came from Hong Kong. My father came in 1953. He came as a student across on the ship and up through the railway from San Francisco to Vancouver. He was able to demonstrate to the registrar of the UBC University that his English was good enough. So he was able to gain admittance, and he stayed in the summertime in Chinatown, where the local church helped him find his first job as a janitor at St. Paul's Hospital. My mother came over as a nurse in 1962, and she went into home care to help people at home with their health care as they come out of hospitals. Many elderly people, including in the riding I represent today in Vancouver-Langara, have a dependency on home care to ensure that they can live longer and healthier lives in the communities in which they raise their families and also created jobs and employed people. And so I think it's very important that we have that continuum of care. But my father, when he was in university, also became a pharmacist. He was actually in the first drugstore for London Drugs, which was located in Chinatown in Vancouver. And that was the first location. And they had another location in downtown Vancouver. Eventually, that business ran into receivership. And so the Louis family bought that business and became London Drugs what it is today. But my father went on to own and operate a number of drugstores on the east side of Vancouver. And I grew up in the 70s working in those drugstores. Like many new Canadians who come to Canada, working 7 days a week, sacrificing a lot of their time to raise their children in a better community. This is all that we want to appeal to. We recognize the importance of hard work and risk and sacrifice, and that we have a better future that we all want to build here for our children and our grandchildren to come. This is the story that I share with many of you when you look at new opportunity to come to this province of British Columbia. And so as I come forward as the local MLA in Vancouver-Langara, I represent a community that's very diverse, a very diverse makeup of people who are of Indo-Canadian background, Chinese-Canadian, Jewish, Filipino, many longtime Canadians that we see in the area of the city that I represent, going from Granville to Fraser, 33 to Marine Drive. I was elected first in 2017 and re-elected in 2020. I'm the only BC Liberal MLA to maintain or increase my vote share in the last two elections. And out of 28 seats in Vancouver, Burnaby, Richmond, and Surrey, we only have 5 out of 28 seats today after the 2020 election. Clearly, in order for us to regain government in the future, we need to regain our ground in the Lower Mainland. I believe I'm the best person to be able to do that. And one of the reasons why I'm coming forward is to become that new face of leadership for our party and for our province. And this is what we need to go forward. We need to modernize the BC Liberal Party to be more fiscally responsible and accountable, which is what we've done in the past, to drive the economy, to ensure that we have strong trade and investment in our province. But we also need to be more socially progressive. We need to understand and appreciate that people need our help from a government point of view in partnership with community organizations, the private sector, not-for-profit organizations that I was involved with. When I was involved with the Chinese Canadian community, I started working with Youth at Risk in 1984, working in Chinatown with many young people who needed to find a better path forward. And that was working and organizing youth activity programs. I went into youth leadership, organizing youth conferences in the mid-1980s, and I was selected to be part of a National Youth Advisory Committee in 1985. I traveled around the country for a year, and that taught me a lot about government and politics and society, and so I decided to change my focus and went and finished my first degree on cell biology and went into political science. I got involved in student government. I became the first Canadian of Chinese descent to be elected the student body president at UBC. I also was on the board of Success, the immigrant and social service organization that continued to support new Canadians adapt to Canadian society. I did that in the late 1980s. I also was involved in head tax redress. For many of you who know about the history of our country, there was a time where people of Chinese descent were not made to feel welcome in our country. This is a very challenging time after so many had contributed to the building of the railway system that connects this entire country together for ourselves, including on the West Coast and British Columbia. Many lives lost and the sacrifices that were made. But I know that as we come forward, that there's a better opportunity to continue to collaborate and have a more harmonious society. But head tax redress was an important time, where I spent 18 months as a university student interviewing payees of the head tax, because we needed to have a better appreciation as a country about what that meant, that level of discrimination which is systemic against people of Chinese descent. And of course, we've seen that across many different ethnocultural communities in terms of internment of Japanese Canadians, the incidents relating to Komagato-Naru, where people of Indian descent were not welcome on our shores. Of course, we know with the need for tremendous reconciliation with Indigenous peoples that the confirmation of the discovery of unmarked graves at residential schools across our country has been a real challenge for us as well. But how we come forward now, how we come out of this pandemic, recognizing that there has been a rise of anti-Asian sentiment, that we need to work together in a stronger way. I spent my entire career working on issues relating to diversity and multiculturalism and how we can become a more inclusive society. This is what I truly believe in. I believe that we need to all recognize our differences, but break down the silos that divide us, because we can collaborate more to build a stronger province and country to come. And we should be utilizing the fact that we have a tremendous diversity of population here. For example, people coming from India or mainland China or Taiwan or Korea, other parts of the Asia-Pacific region. We are very strong in that. We should welcome more of that. We should be more receptive to immigration, because we are a very big province. And we need more population growth. We need more opportunity to support international students finding opportunity here in our province. In my riding of Vancouver-Langara, there are over 4,000 international students who attend that college, over 3,000 from India. But I also know that there's much opportunity in terms of the kind of educational platforms that we have in this province, that there's a great need for that intercultural inter-educational exchange, including with the Asia Pacific, that we build many great programs in partnership with many schools that are located in China and elsewhere. That's so important. In terms of my own continued background, I was involved in politics after I was in student government. I became a political staffer for Kim Campbell when she was the first female Minister of Justice of our country. I worked for her for a year in Vancouver in the Minister's Regional Office, and then went to Ottawa for over 2.5 years working for her in justice, then defense, and then her leadership run when she became the first and only female Prime Minister of our country. That was an important time in the early 1990s. There was a lot of change going on, and a lot of renewal in terms of how we could move forward. But there was also a great focus on the Asia Pacific and how there'd be a stronger gateway. So for decades, I've been in that space, working federally in Ottawa and here in this province to strengthen that gateway and that relationship. After I worked for Kim Campbell, I went to law school at the University of Victoria, and then I went into law. I practiced for 20 years with a law firm called Lawson Lundell. It's a very well-known business law firm in Western Canada, one of the leading law firms. I worked for 20 years with mining, forestry, energy companies all over this province, as well as technology companies. And so I know that BC has a very strong brand for resource. And that includes our mineral products, the mineral products that the world needs, rare earth minerals, copper, minerals that are mined here, that are steel-making coal, that is very important for the world, including the Asia-Pacific. And that there's great opportunity to continue to ensure that with the highest environmental and safety standards in the world, that we continue to support the mining industry here in this province, in partnership with First Nations and Indigenous peoples, that we continue to lower our carbon footprint and make the transition to a lower carbon economy, but we need to do this in balance. That we have the strength of our hydroelectric dam system, that I spent 5 years working with BC Hydro, looking at the transmission system, changing it into a different Crown Corporation, and all those arrangements on engineering, field services, and maintenance of the asset, which is the dam structure, the transmission lines. These are very important components of what is the energy backbone of this province that provides clean, reliable, renewable power for generations to come. That is what Site C is about. It's not just about the jobs that are being created, the 2,600 jobs back in 2017, when Christy Clark, as the former premier of our province, moved forward with that project. But it was more about how do we continue to ensure that we have that renewable power source that enables the production of lower carbon product in this province, like aluminum. Aluminum that's produced up north by Rio Tinto is a very important product that the world needs. An example where it has a lower carbon input. This is where BC should lead Canada, certainly, if not other parts of the world. We can continue to lead in energy innovation, clean technology, and energy inputs, because we have that strength to add wind power and solar power to our electric dam system. I know that space very well. And of course, with forestry industry, we've seen a lot of challenges in terms of concern for old growth. We need to find the right balance. We need to find the balance where we can continue to build value-added product here in this province. And I've visited, when I've traveled across this province in the last number of months on this particular campaign with my wife, Christina, we've traveled over 16,000 kilometers in July, August, and October in particular. There was a lot of driving, but we saw a lot of great communities and the importance of the forest industry to these communities. As we look forward in this last period of time, since 2017, under NDP government, the NDP only know one thing, and that is government. Their solution for everything is to make government bigger. And it's not right. We know that we need to do things more in partnership, that we can do things with the private sector, with other organizations. We've seen lately, again, examples where the NDP continue to want to shut down private childcare operators in this province. They've over-regulated the private childcare space, or childcare period, but they've made it particularly more difficult for those who are operating privately. And I know, having been a director of the YMCA Foundation, that YMCA is being the largest provider of childcare in the province, that we need to do things more in partnership. That there are ways to continue to build more spaces for our children, but also to ensure that we continue to add early childhood educators, whether those who are being educated at Langara College in my riding, and finding more opportunities to recruit, retrain, and retain those early childhood educators in our system. Because we need to continue to build that capacity, because clearly we do not have enough childcare spaces in this province. Also, in a similar way, in terms of seniors care, I mentioned that earlier, that we need to continue with a largely healthier and aging population to find more supports. And again, we have to do that in partnership. When I was on the Board of Success, we built many senior care facilities and assisted living facilities, which were culturally appropriate facilities. My grandmother, near the end of her life, had the benefit of living in these facilities like so many other elderly people. But we need to ensure that we have these spaces, like Villa Cathay as well in Chinatown, which I've supported in the past. We need to continue to ensure that we find in language, in culture, ways that we can support elderly people so that they can live their remaining lives in dignity, in respect, and in comfort. But just coming back to the NDP, we've seen the government-only solution. We've seen the high taxes, the 23 new and increased taxes that they've imposed on this province since 2017, like the school tax, the speculation tax, the employer's health tax, the carbon tax, which is no longer revenue neutral, so it's just another general tax in itself. We've seen all of the taxes that increase the tax burden on so many of us. But that puts us at a competitive disadvantage where many people are choosing to not come here. They're choosing to move their capital elsewhere. We need to compete for people's investment dollars and capital dollars. And I know that we can do that under a BC Liberal government, under my leadership. But also, as we look forward, we've seen, again, the increase of the size of government. They've gone from 310,000 to 490,000 under the current budget, an increase of over 50%. Now, I know that there is a role for government, certainly, to give a hand up to those in need. But we need to do this in partnership. I have started my campaign for the leadership of the BC Liberal Party 6 months ago, based on a core theme of restoring trust. And the way we restore trust is around 5 core values that I have put out to the membership of the party. They're available on my joinmichael.ca website in the policy section. The 5 core values are accountability, compassion, community, inclusivity, and integrity. So when we talk about accountability and integrity, certainly fiscal accountability and transparency is very important. I have a policy to ensure that we know where our tax dollars are going. Every single tax dollar coming out of this pandemic is going to be so important. We know the challenge with our healthcare system, that many are having trouble finding family physicians, that they're on wait lists to see specialists, that in emergency times, whether it's our ambulance service or our paramedic service, our firefighters, police, where all those frontline workers have a real, true moral burden that they're having to meet with the demand on our system. And it's all connected together. But it's not just about spending more money. We need to do things more smartly. We need to break down the silos that are in our healthcare system and ensure that it's more effective and less bureaucratically, administratively top-heavy. Certainly we're seeing a lot of layers, let's say, of administration that's making it more difficult for people to get the health services that they need. But we need to do things in compassion as well. Those who are living on the street, we've seen homelessness as being a real challenge. It impacts our community safety, where people do not feel safe in their neighborhoods and in their communities. But we know we need to have more pathways to recovery. I was just again visiting with a recovery center, which is another good example of how do we continue to make sure that not just about safe supply, we're dealing with people's drug addictions, but that we be more compassionate and find more resources to give them more pathways to recovery. Because it cannot just be about safe supply. That's important for dealing with people in crisis. But we also need to give people hope and opportunity by supporting them to find the kind of social supports they need to deal with their addictions. As we come forward, though, I talked a lot about partnership, and that is about community. I think we can do more things together. That it can't be just government knows all, government knows best, only government can take care of our children and our parents and grandparents. We need to find ways to partner more. And I know there are good community organizations across the Chinese Canadian community, across many other communities that are helping each other. And then we need to support that more. And then in terms of how we go forward on around inclusivity, I've been the one candidate to really define very strongly that we are not a place to give a platform for anyone who has intolerant views. I've spoken out about that. I'm the only candidate to say that versus another candidate that potentially might have jumped into this race, that the party subsequently did not approve his candidacy. But I think that's important in terms of how we define our party going forward, that we do respect people's freedom of expression. But when we're talking about running for leadership of this party and defining the course and the path forward for this party, that we can't have somebody who's expressed views that are intolerant in the past. Also, we've had situations on my campaign that have been definitely representative of the need to ensure that we raise our standards higher to ensure that women, members of the LGBTQ community, people of different ethnic backgrounds, different religions, different ages, are all feel very welcome in our party, because we need to do that. We need to modernize this party For too long, we've been seen by the NDP to be very focused and very narrow. So we have to broaden our appeal, as I've said in my last leadership race. This is how I feel we can definitely move forward in a strong way as to how we can win the next election. So I stand here looking to build the party again, to be more balanced and inclusive, to be a modern party, to be a party that everyone can see themselves in. We have to reach out across the communities, including the many diverse communities in the Lower Mainland. I am the leader to do that. I will be a different face of leadership for our party and our province. I believe it's time. It's time for a different face of leadership in this country, and I know I can do that. I hope that those of you who have heard me speak here today have learned something about me. If you want to learn more about me, please check out my website, joinmichael.ca. And as we go forward, I want to say that I'm very grateful to have the support of my family. Some of you may have seen that. My wife, Christina, my 3 children, Justine, Graham, and Andrea, who are now 29, 27, and 23. My understanding that I had with my wife before I ran for elected politics, we've been married for 30 years now, is that my children would need to be out of high school. That is something that we honored. I tested that many times when I had the opportunity to run in different levels of government, but ultimately we stuck with it. And so when my youngest daughter was just graduating from high school is when I was able to step forward to run for provincial office. I'm grateful to those who have supported me in the past over the last 4.5 to 5 years. I hope that you'll join me in this effort to rebuild the BC Liberal Party, because we need a better alternative as we go forward. We have to reset the course of our province, because we are seeing so much challenge out there, whether it's the politics of the world, whether it's climate change, whether it's the pandemic challenges, whether it's concerns, again, with our relationship and partnership with Indigenous peoples and First Nations in this province and across this country. We have a lot of work to do. And I believe that it takes a leader of my experience, with my private sector experience and my community experience and my elected experience, a leader who understands the needs and the concerns of everyday British Columbians, including British Columbians of different ethno-cultural backgrounds and new immigrants to this province, and someone who knows that how we need to go forward is to be authentic, is to lead with integrity, is to restore trust with our party and with our government. And I hope to have your confidence and your vote and support. If you'd like to join me in this effort, please join up as a member for the BC Liberal Party. You can do that through my joinmichael.ca website. Thank you again. Appreciate it.